today's session, Web2Sales, next hot marketing trend or unfulfilled hype. This is actually my second year speaking and moderating a panel at Mid-Atlantic Marketing Summit. It's a pleasure to be back. I'm going to do some introductory remarks for about 10-15 minutes, and then we're going to invite up our panelists. So I'm going to try to provide a little bit of context to shape this discussion. I got a lot of really good feedback. I did a presentation last year called The Intersection Point, and after the presentation, got some great feedback. And then wherever I went through the course of the year, people would come up to me and say, hey, I remember you from the Mid-Atlantic Marketing Summit. That was a great presentation that you gave. It was really entertaining and very funny. And I'd say, well, great. Well, what else do you remember about it? And they would say, well, actually, not really much of anything else, right? So my goal this year is to be both entertaining as well as memorable, because I think I've got a pretty interesting topic to talk about. The entertaining part I feel pretty good about, because as some of you may know, I actually have a hobby. In addition to running Strategic Communications Group, I perform stand-up comedy. This year I'm probably going to do about 60 shows, and I've got a great niche. I perform at charitable fundraisers, college events, high school events. In fact, I am now in the middle of what I like to refer to as high school after prom season. So May and June, I will perform at 11 high schools throughout the Washington, D.C. area. If you have an interest in seeing me perform, I invite you to join me at 2:30 a.m. this morning. I will be with 400 17 and 18-year-olds at Blake High School in Rockville, Maryland for a very interesting show. So please come on out. What they teach you about comedy, though, is actually very analogous, very relevant to all of the marketers here in this room. Comedy is about two things. It's about timing, and it's about connecting with your audience through a relevant message. So what I'm going to try to do for you here now is share a story, set the stage for what I hope is going to be a really interesting talk, something that's really going to lead into what's going to be a great panel. And my story actually starts with my family. My wife and I have 3 sons. We have an 11-year-old Hunter, a 9-year-old Landon, and then we have baby Bryce, who just turned 1 on Wednesday. So yes, I know what you're thinking. 11, 9, 1. Hey, sometimes your world is full of nice surprises. What's also interesting to know is, so like when they tell you that the system is only 99.4% reliable, guess what? They're not kidding. It really is true. Sometimes that 0.6% can really change your world. This story, though, is about my middle son, Landon, and he is a 3rd grader at Woodacres Elementary School over in Bethesda, Maryland. And as they start winding down the semester, what happens is they start getting to the end of the curriculum, and so they start coming up with other ways to fill the school day. So what Woodacres has done over the last couple weeks is they invite in parents for kind of what it is that your parent does for work, kind of those sorts of things. And so my wife was kind enough to volunteer me for the first session on a couple Fridays ago to go into Woodacres Elementary School to talk to a group of 9-year-olds about what it is that I do for a living. And so 9 a.m. arrives, and I show up at Woodacres, and there's another father there. There's actually ironically enough, the other father who was there is the assistant fire chief in Montgomery County. So we're sitting there waiting, and he's in his full fire garb, and he's got the plastic hats and everything. And Miss Ahern comes out, and that's Landon's teacher, and says, you know what? All right, who wants to be the first father that comes in? And he says, you know, Mark, I got to get to the fire station, so let me go in and knock this thing out. I'm like, of course. So he goes in for 10 minutes, and I'm sitting out there in the hallway, and then the door opens 10 minutes later, he comes out, and all I see are like kids wearing fire hats in there cheering, right? So now it's my turn. So he comes in, and I sit down, and I'm now faced with these 39-year-olds, and they all look at me, and the teacher says, Landon, would you like to get up and introduce your father and talk a little bit about what he does for a living? And so my 3rd grader stands up, and he says in front of his entire classmates in this incredibly proud voice, he says, my dad gets up in the morning, showers, he shaves, he puts on a suit, he drives into an office, and I have no idea what he does. But I follow him on Twitter, so I know he tweets all day long. And the best part of the story is 3 of the kids in this class were also on Twitter, 2 are on Pinterest, and 1 actually has his own blog. It's amazing, right? The point I'm getting to is something that's very interesting and very relevant for everyone here in this room. How people interact, where they find content, how they learn and engage, as we all know, has changed. And it's led to a very interesting trend, a trend that I believe has dramatically shifted and changed how each of our organizations market and sell their solutions over the last couple of years. Analysts refer to this trend as the enlightened buyer. So this is statistics from Corporate Executive Board, which now goes by the brand CEB. A couple years ago, they interviewed thousands of buyers in the business-to-business and public sector segment. And what they found was, on average, a typical buyer is now 57% of the way through the process before they will actually engage in a conversation with a sales rep. 57%. Now, many of you might think, well, hey, that's great, right? Because you got all these educated buyers showing up. Well, in fact, it creates a lot of problems for us. The first problem that it creates is this tremendous burden, this challenge to differentiate your solutions. Because now when you've got buyers educating themselves, that's good things, but maybe for a sales organization, it makes it very difficult to differentiate what it is that you do, what makes you special, because a buyer already has these preconceived notions. I spoke at a client sales conference, their sales kickoff meeting earlier this year, and I heard this from all of their sales reps, that they were hearing from buyers, not who wanted to talk about features or functionality or solutions or business cases. They were hearing from buyers, first conversation was, what's the best price that you can give me? That's not a conversation you want to have as a sales rep. For marketers, the enlightened buyer creates this other problem. How do we get in front of people when we don't even know that they're really ready to be a buyer, and they may not even represent or present themselves yet as being interested or open or willing to have a dialogue? The enlightened buyer is something that's changed how we as an organization go to market. But what we've done as marketers is something that's very encouraging and something that's very exciting. We picked up on this trend, and the first thing that we did was we figured out, hey, we've got to own this social thing. Remember a couple years ago, there was this big debate about who would own social media within an organization. Would it be HR? Would it be marketing? Would it be product management? Well, guess what? Marketing has taken ownership of that, which is really exciting. So we friend, we fan, we face, we follow, we like. We do all those great things through social media, creating interactions with these key audiences, customers, partners, prospects, really building a strong sense of community. And then what we figure out is, well, wait a second. These enlightened buyers are really interested in having a dialogue with us. Not in person, they don't want to talk to a sales rep yet, but maybe they're interested in consuming thought leadership content, information that we can provide that can help them make better business decisions. This led to the rise of content marketing. So whether we start blogging or tweeting or sharing, we as organizations start creating content. Now, I talked about content marketing recently at another conference, a conference called the Inbound Marketing Summit. And I give this talk, and then someone comes up to me afterwards, and I have to admit he was a little bit of an older gentleman. So when he approached me, I thought he was going to talk about the marketing campaign that he worked on when he rolled out the wheel. That's what we were talking about here. And he said, you know, Mark, he's like, I've been working on content marketing for 40 years. This isn't a new trend. This has been around for a long time. Absolutely. We've developed white papers in the past. We've developed interesting marketing decks, interesting presentations. The difference today, though, is what social and search and the availability of content online has allowed us to do is bring the distribution cost for that content way down. When I first got into this business in the early 1990s, you would develop a white paper, and who remembers this? You'd have to like stick it into a trade magazine to have it distributed, right? And they'd charge you like 50 grand to do it. Or you'd have to go to a trade show and you'd have this huge booth and you hope people would come by. The problem with that approach was it was really expensive, and this cliche, what all of the marketers in this room know, is that 50% of my budget was inherently wasted. What was the challenge? I didn't know which 50%, because I was spending a lot of money reaching people that I didn't care about. Well, social gives us the ability to build community, gives us the ability to distribute content in a very low-cost, targeted way. So we're thinking, all right, man, content marketing, we're really rolling. So we got blogs, we got all kinds of ways to get information out there. This is changing the paradigm, changing the dynamic for marketing. We are now have the ability to measure the impact and the success that we have on our organization. Well, maybe not so much. So this is research from Forrester that came out and said that 83% of us are still unable to measure the impact, the ROI, from the dollars that we spend on content. Shit, this is a problem, right? Excuse my language. Man, I thought I'd be able to sit with the CFO and say, you know, my blog, my Twitter feed, look at all the value that I'm delivering to the organization. Look at the revenue stream that I'm creating. But that's still not happening. We're still having trouble measuring the impact of our content, our digital, our social programs in a meaningful and measurable way. Now, I shared this slide at another recent conference, a conference specifically for sales professionals, and it was like there was an applause in the audience at this slide. Like the sales guys were like, ha! I knew it! Frickin' marketers, walking around with your blogs and your content. Nobody's reading that stuff. So guess what? I've added a slide to my presentation. Here's another doozy from Forrester. They just came out with this. 1 million sales jobs in the next 5 years are going to disappear. B2B sales jobs. And this isn't like customer service gigs where it's like, hey, I'm a customer service rep in Ohio. Uh-oh, my job's in India now, or my job's in Eastern Europe. This is like Kaiser Sose disappearing. Anyone catch the Usual Suspects reference? Anyone? Anyone? Good. Movie filmed in the mid-1990s. All right, got it. These are B2B sales jobs that Forrester thinks are going away. Why? Because customers don't like talking to salespeople who bring no value to the process. So what's happening here in organizations like yours, marketing and sales, we need to get with it. We need to understand that if we want to continue to be relevant, if we want to continue to be respected, if we want to continue to even be viable, we've got to demonstrate a return on investment, the ability to influence how prospects and customers and partners make decisions in a very measurable way. So let me throw out a new term for you, Web2Sales. Perhaps you've heard of this. A lot of people are now starting to talk about this. Web2Sales isn't magic. It's a very simple philosophy, a simple methodology in which you look at the stuff that you're already doing. We've got a content program. We're socially engaged. I've got a website. Maybe I've got a microsite. I'm search engine optimizing things. You look at all of those programs that you currently have in place and you determine what are the ways that I can take these activities so it's not just a big bag of tactics. And if you have a big bag of tactics, that's okay. Most people have a big bag of tactics. But how can I take these different disparate activities and actually direct it in a way to achieve measurable sales outcomes? Whether it's top of the funnel lead generation, lead nurturing, or account-based marketing. Things that our organization, our CFO, our CEO, even the board can actually look at and measure impact. So, sounds good in theory. Let me give you a couple of best practices, a couple of tips that you may want to consider as you start thinking about Web2Sales. The first is be tactical. And it would be great if I could sit up here and say, this is a fabulous opportunity for you to now effect sweeping change across your organization to get multiple business lines and disparate groups working together in harmony. That's called La La Land. It simply doesn't happen. What we have found is, with all these different activities, all these different marketing programs that you have in place, it's really smart to start small. Find one specific measurable outcome. Hey, we are introducing a new product. We don't have any leads at the top of the funnel. Or we're going to an important trade show. I've got an important person here in the room who's going to a big show in London next week. Maybe for this show, we can figure out, are there key relationships, key targets at this show that we can get closer with? Or I've got a channel strategy. I look at my channel partners. Maybe there are 2 or 3 channel partners who are also distributing my competitors' products. Can I maybe grow share of wallet there? It's okay to be tactical. Tactical is where it starts, as long as it's measurable. So find a specific area where you can have a win. Success has many fathers. It's a cliche, right? The second you build some sort of tactical success, a lot of folks in the organization can then get behind a philosophy. It's easier to affect overall change. Second best practice, collaborate with sales. You heard the 2 Paynes talk about this before. It is true. I have worked with a myriad of different companies, and what I can tell you is sales and marketing dysfunction continues to run rampant. Why is that? What do the salespeople say? You know, the marketing people, they all have a creative communications background. They walk around. I have no idea what it is that they do. But when I'm going to a trade show and I need pens or T-shirts, I'll let them know. Right? I mean, who's experienced that? It's really frustrating, right? Over in sales, we own the customer relationship. Don't you worry. I have so many client organizations where, like, you get to the end of the quarter in a public environment, everyone's got to make their numbers. Whoa, we can't talk to sales. It's like, really? Aren't you there to empower their success? You would think they would want to talk to you, right? And then what's our frustration over in marketing with sales, right? We identify all of these leads. We've got some names that we cowboy up. We go to a trade show, or we have this white paper. We got all kinds of downloads, and we send it over to sales. And what do they do with it? Nothing. And it's like, why? Well, what's going on? We had a client program that we ran last year. We had a white paper, 72 downloads. People filled out a form, who they were, where they worked, what they were effing responsible for. Some of them actually filled out their budget, and it went over to sales, and then like 8 weeks later, it was like, yeah, you know, we had this golf tournament, and we had this other thing going on. We just haven't gotten around to calling people. And so it's really frustrating, this dysfunction that exists. And what I encourage you to do is take ownership of the relationship. Be a pain in the ass if you have to. Walk over, engage with those folks in sales to really understand what are their opportunities, where are their challenges, what direction can they provide, because that's going to then inform everything that we do from a marketing function. And if we can then, through a web-to-sales methodology, demonstrate how we're having impact and traction, they're going to be forced to engage with you. The best thing that can possibly happen is you take your program and you integrate it in with Salesforce and marketing automation. I'll talk about that in a second, because then suddenly it's in the dashboard. I always love saying that. You know, we've got a couple of programs that are integrated into Salesforce. And so what type of impact are you having? Well, let's pull up the dashboard, because everyone loves looking at dashboards, right? If you can demonstrate meaningful impact and be proactive in collaborating with sales, good things will happen. Best practice number 3, think like a publisher. The foundation of everything that we do in marketing is content that engages, educates, and when appropriate, entertains. There's no way around it. I meet with a lot of companies that have a blog or they have really interesting content programs that nobody reads because it reads like a press release or it reads like a marketing brochure. Has anyone ever read a press release? Anyone? Anyone? I wrote them for 15 years. The same thing. I basically wrote the same press release for 15 years, substituting out company X and putting in company Y, right? And then I would charge $1,500 an hour to do it, right? Nobody talks that way. Marketing content is often so lawyered up that when people read it, it's like, what is this? Your last white paper. I got bad news for you. 2 people read it. You who edited it and the person who wrote it, right? Who's downloaded a 35-page white paper and actually read it? It's because it's really difficult to get through. But when you think like a publisher and not so much focus on what you have to sell, but how can I educate and inform and share with my customers and prospects best practices that can help them be more successful, they will absolutely read it. Am I doing things with other customers where those lessons learned can apply in this environment? Because if you educate and inform, you are earning the right to engage a person in a meaningful sales conversation. Let's not forget something which is a truism. All of business is relationship-centric. People do business with companies that they know and trust. So you get behind the value propositions and the solutions and the capabilities. Ultimately, it's 2 people doing business. And if you can use your content by thinking like a publisher and acting like a trade journalist and help someone be successful, that's the foundation of a mutually beneficial relationship. So the panelists that we have here today are very interesting. Admittedly, I do work for all of them. They're not here to talk about how wonderful strategic is, although if they want to mention that, it would be certainly fine. But what's interesting to note is, so Juliet Ironbow, I've worked for 4 years. We've had a long-standing relationship. We don't agree on everything, yet the relationship is strong enough that I'm able to articulate an opinion, and she's ultimately able to make a decision, and then we move forward. Peter and I, this is the first time that we've ever done business together. We've known each other for a decade. There was just never an opportunity. But when that opportunity presented itself, that relationship came together. Natalia's a relatively new client, but already in a very short amount of time, we've established that relationship based on mutual trust. When you think like a publisher in your content strategy, even though you may not know someone personally, you're building that trust, and that's the foundation of a business relationship. The last best practice that I want to share with you is intersect with technology. So, dirty little secret. And Joe Payne didn't want to say this. Guess what about marketing automation? Eloqua, Marketo, Pardot, HubSpot. A lot of people are using these really sophisticated marketing automation platforms as really souped up, expensive email distribution. There's all this other stuff that they look at and they're like, man, I just want to get out my freaking weekly e-newsletter. I can't worry about all these other things. And with Salesforce, hey, I love Salesforce as much as the next guy. It's a really expensive database where you're only using about 10% of the functionality. So what I encourage each of you to think about is, not that you have to be a technologist, but are there a couple of different applications of this technology that your company is invested in that you can then apply to your business, you can apply to your programs? And again, not sweeping across the entire organization, very tactically. Can I create a field in Salesforce so I can actually measure when somebody downloads a white paper, how long does it take for the Salesforce to follow up with that person? Or can I use some lead scoring methodologies through my marketing automation platform to better understand what are the attributes of my best customer? It's a fascinating process. I went through that at my organization. What I found was, at one point I had 25 clients. I'm now down to 11. Why? Because my top 10 clients produced 80% of my profit. If you go through and you understand who makes your best customer, what are their attributes, you can map that towards the prospect process. It's incredibly powerful. And as marketers, it doesn't take a lot of work. You don't have to have a PhD in engineering. But what it does is it gives you the ability to engage with different audiences within your organization in a very meaningful way. You're not there as the pen person. You're not there as the person that's just working the trade show booth. You're there as someone that understands the business, understands the customer, and can help drive revenue. That's the foundation of Web2Sales. So I'm going to ask our panelists to come up and join us now. What I'm going to do is challenge them on a couple of different things. I'm a consultant, right? So I actually get to talk about this stuff. I don't really have to do it, to be honest with you, right? My clients have to do this, right? That's the hard job. So I'm going to challenge them about this vision, this image that I've presented. Is this really true? Is this really possible? And what I'm going to promise you is this. This is not a panel where we're all going to sit up here and tell each other how smart we are. I hate those panels. This is a panel where you may hear some of us disagree. You may hear them disagree with me. That's okay. That's what this is about. We want to give you a clear and honest assessment of what's going on in the marketplace so you can look at your organization and make a very smart decision about, does this approach make sense? And if so, how to best apply it in your environment. All right, so let's start by asking each of you to introduce yourself. And Peter, you're sitting next to me, so I'm going to start with you. Great. And what I think you're going to find interesting is each of them have a very similar role in their organization, but their organizations are dramatically different from one another.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Peter Scott. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Divvy Cloud, as was mentioned. Divvy Cloud is a technology startup, very small, here in the Northern Virginia area, and we basically try to unify a multi-cloud world, try to help organizations get control over cloud sprawl as everyone's out there stumbling around in the new cloud world.
Okay. Julie, how about you?
Julie Zeffert. I'm the VP of Marketing and Communications for a company called Iron Bow Technology. So we're a technology solutions provider based out of Chantilly, Virginia, but we're nationwide. I have a marketing and finance background. I've been worked in the Wall Street community and in politics and in the nonprofit sector. I've been in technology now for the last 10 years, always with a marketing and finance bent to what I do.
Okay. Natalia, recently promoted to marketing director, I might like to add, so congratulations on that.
Thank you. So I started as an intern 5 years ago at SES, and we are the largest satellite operator in the world right now with 54 satellites. So every time you're watching Game of Thrones, that's actually one of our satellites, so you're welcome. But I work for the government solutions side, so we provide critical communications to the U.S. government as well as civilian agencies.
So Natalia, let's stay with you for this next question. Can you talk to our audience a little bit about what your marketing organization looks like? I mean, you must have world's largest satellite company. I mean, you must have just armies of marketers rolling around your office in Reston, right?
No, actually, it's just myself and a marketing specialist that reports to me. And we actually outsource our blog to a ghostwriter, Ryan. But I constantly work with our parent company over in Europe on a weekly basis to make sure our campaigns are collaborative, work with industry partners, even some of our competitors on some of our communications efforts, everybody from Leidos to Orbital ATK, sometimes government organizations like FAA or NASA just recently. So.
Okay. Julie, how about you? So Iron Bow, which is a very significant player in both the federal and commercial IT world. So talk to us a little bit about what your marketing team, what your organization looks like.
Well, we're an 8-person team now, but 5 years ago we were a 3-person team. I think our value add has increased over the course of these years, and thus we've been able to build the organization up somewhat internally. So I've got a couple of graphic people on the team. We do a lot in the partner marketing realm, so there's 3 people that concentrate in that. And we do internal communications. I have a person that concentrates our efforts there in content development. And we have a very substantial external resource team that we see as an extension of our own team. Okay. So PR and media buying and a variety of graphic resources.
Okay. Peter, how about you? I mean, Divvy Cloud being a fast growth company in the hybrid cloud management space, I mean, you must have a huge marketing organization.
Sure,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All me.
Oh, you?
Yeah.
Oh, you?
No, we are a classic startup. So, my role in the company with three technologist founders and a developer that we recently hired is basically to do all things commercial. So I'm here wearing my chief marketing officer hat, but I could just as easily be selling, product marketing, promotion, lead generation, looking at websites, everything basically that's not actually coding our tool kind of falls into my bag. And so what does that mean? It means that obviously I have to work a lot with our co-founders to get, it's a very technical product that we sell. We sell to technologists, very often sysadmins and developers and things like that. So I have to be able to work with our co-founders to understand our product, understand how they would view the problem, how they would view our solution, and try to communicate that out into the market.
Okay.
But again, we have friends of the firm and people we work with on a very sort of specific basis to, as you said, tactically to try to make progress as we grow this company.
Let's explore a little bit about each of your jobs, and then we'll dive into some of the Web2Sales concepts and messaging that I've referred to in my introductory remarks. So Julie, let's start with you with this question. One of the things that I mentioned during my overview is that the role marketers play in their organization has changed dramatically over the last couple of years. And so you, with such a long-standing track record of success at Ironbone and some of the places that you worked prior to that, do you agree with that? I mean, is your job today that much dramatically different than it was, say, 5, 6, 7 years ago?
It is. And I work in an industry which is very male-dominated. It's not unusual for me to be the only woman sitting at a table, C-level executives. And I will tell you that while we were, this is not going to be news to anyone here, you're really perceived as the creative force in your company and for your brand. Now we are expected to sit at the table and be strategic, have a mind towards business and driving revenue in everything that we do. So that is always, for a lot of marketers, that's a challenge because it's you're looking for one-stop shopping in a person to be the creative person, and also, by the way, you've really got to have a tremendous amount of business acumen, and that's often not found in one person, right? So I think it is true that the CMOs of today's that are doing it right will be your CEOs of tomorrow if you can really combine all of those skills in one person.
Peter, let me come back to you and have you comment on that as well. So yes, you're a one-person marketing organization, but you've worked in larger companies. And plus, something that you've yet to mention is you guys are actually going through an implementation of HubSpot. So you're putting in place your own marketing automation platform. Yeah. So can you talk to our audience a little bit about the different skill sets that you've had to now bring to this job as a marketing leader at DivvyCloud?
Yeah, I think to the point, any functional area has to stop thinking as a function. You can get all of your metrics aligned and look like you're killing it. I don't care if you're in marketing or your product development, but if your company's not doing well, if you're not thinking about your company strategically and as a little bit of a GM, then you're not thinking about it right. You really do need to appreciate what you're doing to make the overall product. You talked about collaborating with the sales team. If they're not being successful, you're not doing something right. But in terms of technology, of course, over the last 20 years, from just having a website to a great deal of digital tools, creating a digital presence online, getting your message out through this new low-cost distribution channels, you really do have to love the technology a little bit and appreciate it. And one of the things that I know I'm skipping ahead to sort of things that you would suggest is you've got to keep getting your hands dirty. I work with a bunch of coders. And these guys are, they're constantly putting their hands on things and breaking apart and trying to work with them. I don't know, my daughter's in elementary school and she's got the maker's corner where they encourage kids to go lay their hands on stuff and make things, right? And I think that as marketers, we can kind of forget that a little bit. Like, when was the last time you went into your technology, touched it, configured it, played with it, did the job of some of the people that work for you, so that you don't lose track of or lose your sort of intuition into the technology, how it works, and what it can do for you.
Okay. So let's continue to move the conversation forward. Natalia, let me turn this towards you. So as we know, marketing is one function within an organization, and there's this constant push and pull in terms of resources and responsibilities and expectations. Can you talk a little bit about how you interact with some of your internal audiences, the CFO, your CEO, folks who are customer facing, and kind of how their expectations of marketing have changed or maybe haven't changed, and how you manage that whole process?
Sure. So since we're a government contractor, obviously we rely on our revenue from contract awards. So we're really focused on business development and opportunities coming up. And over the years, creativity hasn't changed in terms of the demand. They always look to me, what's the next big thing? What's the technology that we should be using as part of our marketing campaign? So that hasn't changed. However, what has changed is a more refined focus on our opportunities. So if we're chasing an opportunity with NASA or the Air Force, are they downloading our white papers? Are they reading our blog? When I first started, we had only traditional media 5 years ago. Nobody even wanted to touch social media in our office. Nobody was using it. And they lifted the ban for DoD users to engage in social media in 2011, 2012. So my executive team was looking to me saying, is this something we should pursue? Is our customer even going to go on social media? So it was a risk that I had to take, like mentioned, you have to take risks, and it really paid off for us.
Okay. Julie, how about you? I mean, you are part of Iron Bow's executive team, and I know, just having worked for you, you have a very close relationship with your CEO. And a lot of times he said, okay, I don't understand exactly what we're doing here, but I trust you, so let's roll with it. Can you talk to our audience a little bit about how you've gone through the process of building such close connections with other members of the executive team so that they really buy into your vision, even if they may not exactly understand what entails that vision and what type of outcome that's going to produce?
Well, I think we've built a lot of credibility over the years, and so they've been great about taking some leaps of faith with myself and my team, because they trust us, and we take our fiduciary responsibility very, very seriously. You're always coming in under budget. I have a very healthy respect and understanding of finance, it's funny, my CIO came to me about a year ago, and he said, I understand, in order for us to be successful, I have to be your best friend. And I get that from a number of people in leadership. They recognize that it's essential to align and really align with marketing and to be partners, because we will be playing a role in each of their jobs. And moreover, they now are seeing us not just as a sales enabler or as the entity that's promoting their brand, but as a new revenue stream. Marketing as a service. We are a victim of our own success. They want to sell us now. And that opens up all new avenues for them and challenges for us.
So Iron Bow's partners have been so impressed with the programs that you and your team have put in place. They're now actually coming to you and saying, hey, can you help us do this as well too? And it's...
Well, we had certainly been doing that historically for the partner community, but I'm specifically speaking about our customers.
Wow.
They now are building marketing as a service, or certainly would like to do that, into many proposals where we're going to be expected to handle the internal communications and training and what have you, and rolling out a new technology. And just from we can certainly handle that, but from a bandwidth perspective, it's going to mean some... we'll have to make some choices in terms of headcount or external resources or what have you, because it's just a whole new area and makes us that much more valuable to my organization.
So Peter, I'm going to throw the same question to you, but I'm going to share with the audience a little bit of a quick story. So this is all about expectations and managing, internally what people should expect from marketing. So you and I have talked before in the past, and I think one of the things you once mentioned to me is that you were engaging and talking to your founder and your CEO, and he started a conversation kind of like this. Peter, I was reading a book on marketing last night, and boy, I always love that. It kind of back to the old days of when I was in the advertising creative communications business, and I would have clients, that were maybe in the technical side that said, my roommate in college was an art director, and he told me once, and then whatever, right? Or I don't really know a lot about marketing, but, and it's always like, okay, wait a second, stop, don't complete that sentence. But that happened to you recently, where your CEO was like, I was reading a book on marketing, and then started going into what his thoughts were. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, I'm lucky because he always does it with a grain of salt and a twinkle in his eye, sort of like, oh, you're going to love this. I was reading this book on marketing. So Look, we're very much, our culture is about learning and learning from each other. And Lord knows, every now and again I get a high five because I do something technically competent, and the guys pat me on the head and say, good at you, old man. Good stuff there. And I hate them for it. But it is good to engage with them. I mean, the worst is when you've got leadership who don't engage in marketing, who aren't thinking about go-to-market, who don't, connect the dots from, we've got to develop a good product, we need to position it in the customer's mind, and we need to have a sales process to be able to get deals done, and then we need to be able to support those throughout their life cycle so they have a good experience. And, if somebody's thinking about it that way and they're coming to you saying, look, I got some ideas, you got to take it in. It's like in a customer meeting, right? Somebody asks a question, like, that's a fantastic question. Right? Every time. You don't care if it's the dumbest question you ever heard in your life. You're going to tell them it's a fantastic question because you appreciate the fact that they're engaged with what you're doing. And I think one of the benefits of being such a small startup, and why I like doing this for a living, is you haven't had any time to build up the walls and the silos, but there are the perceptions. Hey, you're the marketing guy, so you're creative and you can write well. And I'm like, really? Because I guess. I mean, I know people who do that, and I can bring them to the table. But you got to look at it and look at any of the pushback that you get and appreciate. Strip it down and understand, where's it coming from. If it's a sales guy, it's because they're under a lot of pressure to go sell their quota or they're going to get fired. If it's your CEO, because he wants to understand, he wants to get out there and make this business successful. And if you always strip it back to where that's coming from, it makes it pretty easy to engage in the dialogue, I've found.
Okay. Natalia, do you have any tactical programs or campaigns currently in place that you think our audience might find of interest? Anything that you're currently working on that you're pretty proud of?
Sure. We actually launched the GovStat report a couple months ago, so it's still our little baby, but it's really paid off in terms of white paper downloads, senior leaders in the government reading our content, and it's pretty bold articles that we're putting out there. One of the most recent ones was very reminiscent of Star Wars from the Reagan years. There's a lot of adversaries that can jam government satellites out there, the 10 government satellites that they know where they're located. Meanwhile, you've got the commercial industry with 100 plus satellites where you can spread out your mission to mitigate risk. And that's something that we're really pushing out there. And recently we found out there's folks like Joint Chiefs of Staff reading our content. So,
So you're actually publishing content about satellites.
Yes.
And people are actually interested and engaged with it.
It's amazing.
Now, are you just writing about how wonderful the SES satellites are? Because I'm sure they're just, or is it more of a thought leadership type of approach? What's kind of the editorial behind it?
It's absolutely a thought leadership approach. We really run it like a trade publication. So when we reach out to folks that we want to feature as guest writers or somebody we want to quote, like customers in our blog, we'll have third party reach out as if they were a reporter. And we've got a lot of industry alliances that are retweeting, publishing this content because it really comes off like news articles.
Julie, how about you? And so again, for our audience here today, Julie's team at Ironbow started taking a publishing approach to their content literally 4 years ago. I mean, when it was, wow, everyone's using blogs as kind of a corporate communications channel, maybe we should be doing it differently. And so she was very much a champion and an early adopter of this methodology. And so you've lived it and seen it how it's evolved over the last 4 years. Are there any specific campaigns that your team is working on right now that you think this audience might find interesting?
This is my opportunity to do a plug for you.
No. In fact, I would prefer to talk about any program.
Well, yeah. We are doing a number of interesting things in relationships with our blogs, but I'll tell you what occurs to me that I find really fun these days that we're doing. That we haven't launched yet, so I'm going to fill you guys in on something we're doing, but it hasn't.
This is still.
So you're not going to tell anybody,
So
right?
nobody
No,
tweet this out.
No, it's fine.
All right.
So, as a company that doesn't produce a widget, our differentiator is our people. But all of my competitors will tell you that their differentiator is their people. It's the talent and the passion for what they have and what have you. But actually illustrating that, making it tangible, is the challenge that we all have. I know it to be true for my company. I love my company and I am passionate about our brand. But how am I going to articulate that effectively? Well, recently, one of our stellar engineers, truthfully an all-star player, was brought to me with our head of HR. He was excitedly holding up a license plate that he had just acquired. And it said Iron Bow. And not only did it say Iron Bow, but it was on a white background with our Pantone color blue, because that's what Virginia happens to have. And
Oh, wow.
so it was perfect. It
Brand
didn't have a
accurate,
one,
right.
it didn't have a space. Ooh, sorry. So there was a little panic in seeing that, certainly for her, and for the moment I thought to myself, what am I going to have to pay to buy that off this guy? Because when we launched this band 5 years ago, as much as we thought we covered the gamut, it never occurred to any of us to get a vanity tag.
Right.
So as a privately held company, I'm thinking, yikes, it's for my CEO. But then, after pausing for a moment, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, what a gift that has just been put in my lap. I have this guy that, we talk about retaining the best and the brightest, and I have the best and the brightest in front of me who's just about to brand his ride with our company's name. He's not going to Monster.com. This guy loves this company, and it's not because of what shows up in its paycheck, because he can get paid this and more anywhere he wants to go. He's branding his ride because he loves his company. And so we filmed him telling us, why. I just went outside and just took my phone, and we filmed him. And I'm going to let him tell the story as to why Iron Bow, because why did this guy with all of this talent and this ability to choose wherever he wants to go every day choose to stick our company's name on his car?
So it was a very natural, genuine representation of how this person feels so strongly about the company, and you hope that then translates into a message for your customers where they start to get it.
Sure, it's authentic, and in this day and age of transparency and what have you, you have more of an obligation and an opportunity to be authentic, even especially as a small company. It's a great opportunity to allow your brand ambassadors, which are the people that work for the company, to really tell the story for you. And that's what we're going to be doing. So look for it.
So Peter, let's get to Web2Sales for a second. So this is a philosophy, a methodology in which you take all these different activities and you align them towards sales metrics. And I talked about content and your web presence and marketing automation. So the great thing about DivvyCloud is you're building a program from the ground up, right? So there was nothing there, and then there was you, and so you got it. So hey, we need a website. Hey, Peter, we need a marketing automation system. Hey, Peter, right? Everything is to you.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about, as you went through this thought process and building this communications program from the ground up, how did attaching what you were doing to measurable sales outcomes influence your thinking?
I think, to be honest, we haven't tied that out closely enough yet. One of the benefits of being so small is your metrics are really easy. Did you sign another customer this month?
Right. Now you have fun. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, we just increased our customer base by 20%. But so in one sense, we're a little bit easier to measure because it's kind of right there every day. We are right now. It's signing up new customers first and foremost. Secondly, it's reoccurring monthly revenue, and thirdly is the depth of engagement of the customers. Because we are a new company, it is a new technology and product, so we need people touching it, feeling it, giving us feedback on it. But the web presence is incredibly important to us because we're selling into a technology market. And we're selling into a generation, and you put the metrics up about how much they're going to go self-educate themselves. And if there's not good content out there that you're able to control that speaks to different audiences. We're doing our big initiative with Mark is we've launched a site called Cloud Sprawl, which I encourage you to go check out because it doesn't look like it's a 5-6 person company. It bats way above its weight class.
Cloudsprawl.net would be the URL. Just
thank you. See, that's why we have friends. But cloudsprawl.net, and really it's about putting out our vision of where cloud is going. And if anybody here is in that technology space, it's growing massively and it's incredibly dynamic. And there are huge players out there making waves, and we're trying to kind of navigate our way through, but we have a point of view, and it's provocative, and it's interesting, and it speaks directly to our background of our company's unique place to have a point of view and have a voice on those topics. So we need to get out there with that, but of course that's kind of useless if it's not going to come back to you in terms of engagement and sales. So the whole, I do believe in Web2Sales. The other aspect of it for us, which comes back to the financial sort of sensibility, is I just want people to understand what the problem is about cloud sprawl and working in a multi-cloud world. I want them to recognize that they need a solution. I want them to come check us out because we know that we have got the best technology to solve that problem. And then I just want them to download it, pay for it, download it off the website. Now, our big enterprise customers won't work that way. That we'll have to go have a more traditional enterprise discussion. But if it's a technologist and they've got a budget and they have a specific problem that they need to solve because they got one business unit in Microsoft Azure, another in AWS, and they just can't keep track of it all, make it easy. They're going to make that decision. Help them make an efficient, effective decision to buy your product. And if that all starts out on the web, then you've got to kind of craft that whole process to make it really efficient. And that's what we have to do in order to compete and grow in this market.
And Natalia, how about you? So your company, I'm assuming there are only a certain number of people in the world that really are authorized to buy satellite bandwidth. And you sell to generals and senior level policymakers and joint chiefs of staff, and you could probably put all of the customers that you serve into this one room, and that would be the entire market. But there's a marketing function at your organization, right? Why wouldn't your company just go and meet and have lunch with all those specific buyers and present what your satellite bandwidth is, and there you go. You don't need marketing. So talk to us a little bit about, for this audience, Web2Sales at your organization, why actually even have this whole approach on your website? Why have thought leadership content? Why do all of these things if you're only really going after 500 people in the world?
Sure. Well, for us, we've actually rebranded twice in the last 5 years.
Oh.
So for us, there's a huge branding benefit when it comes to publishing this thought leadership content and really building credibility with our brand out there and really getting folks out there to share our content within their community. A lot of times you'll see our content will be used for inspiring panel topics for that small niche audience that could fit in this auditorium. So on the one hand, there's branding. On the other hand, it's a business development opportunity for sales. I mean, I've got sales and program managers now fighting for a spot on our blog because they love how they can publish an article specific to a customer for our largest contract that we own that's up for a recompete. They publish the content, they send it to their customers, they go meet with the customer, and then they follow up with part 2 of that specific blog post after the meeting. So we constantly stay in their mind, and it really helps us close the loop on that opportunity.
All right, so let's get to the last question here, and we've only just got a few more minutes. And this is one of my favorite questions to ask in a panel discussion like this, and Julie, I'll start with you. So you've got a room full of exceptional marketers here. You've got some senior level folks, you have folks that may be very programmatically oriented, you may even have some people who are just starting their careers. So from your perspective now, as truly a marketing leader and a member of an executive team of a large organization, if you had one piece of advice to share for a marketer today, what would that piece of advice be?
So this is one of those areas that you and I sometimes don't always agree on.
I know.
It's all right.
But it's still a good piece of advice.
Yeah,
I've heard her answer
it's
this
okay.
question before.
No, so I have 2 parts to that. I will say number one, and an answer to that is, we are in a data-driven world, and I am a gigantic believer in, being conscious of the fact that your intuition is the strongest tool in your arsenal, and to not get lost in all of this noise and data that we are, surrounded with. Lose sight of the fact that you probably know the correct answer right off the bat without actually, making your way through all of that data. So I always encourage people to be conscious of that. I'll tell you that I have my deputy in the audience here, and 10 years ago I hired her, and I'll always tell you that's always one of the best decisions I have ever made, and it was totally intuitively made. And the other thing is, I'm grateful to my dad who made me work in a bank my 4 summers in college while all my friends were having a great time at the beach. And at the time I resented it, but now I sit here very grateful because it led me, with a political science background, to my first job on Wall Street, and a good understanding of finance and budget is very important. It has given me the credibility to express my creative side with the support of my accountant boss, because he knows that what I'm going to do is done with a healthy respect for my budget. And so if you don't have finance background or accounting background, it's cool. Go take a class. If you can speak their language, they'll allow you a lot more latitude and let you take some leaps of faith, because they know that you understand how to speak to the bottom line.
So when you know your organization and you know your colleagues and you know your customers so well, often your gut, your intuition is going to really resonate. And that you can look at a situation and say, okay, yeah, the data may say this, or let's look at that, but I know this business, I know these customers, here's what I think is going to work.
Absolutely.
And it makes sense to go with that.
I show up authentically and be, you got to have that credibility. They have to know that you understand that they're looking at spreadsheets every day, and you can speak that language. And then, people are much more prepared to let you take some chances.
All right, Natalia, so how about you? So you mentioned here during our panel discussion that in the course of 5 short years, you've gone from intern to now leading the marketing organization, which is, that's fabulous. What piece of advice can you share with this audience? I mean, why such success for an organization that truly is a global player in the satellite market?
Well, to Julie's point, I actually just finished my MBA, so yes, accounting definitely helps when it comes to fighting your marketing budget in terms of creative risks. But in terms of shaping your content, one thing that's really worked for me, as I've learned, is get to the tip of the spear, as my ghostwriter tells me all the time. Don't bog me down with technical details. Get to the heart of the story, why it really matters, because at the end of the day, you want your customer reading your content, and in a way, you want them to feel like they're sort of eating comfort food, if you will. So you really want them to feel assured. So in conclusion, know your customer's world better than they know it, publish it, and then promote it.
That's good. All right, Peter, we're going to finish with you, man. I mean, these are the 2 best tough things to follow with. You got one piece of advice for this audience, and they're all on the edge of their seats now. They're expecting something from the DivvyCloud guy.
I love the, know your business. Like, look at the business from a P&L, and I would say absolutely, if you want to be successful in marketing, that's your vision. But I'll throw out a last piece of advice, and usually with marketing folks, you don't have to say this, but do take the risks and move fast. The world around marketing right now, the technology, the trends, and everything else, I mean, it is very dynamic. You can't possibly move fast enough. If you're comfortable with the speed at which you're moving, you're not moving fast enough. I'll tell a 2-second story. I mean, anybody pick a CRM system in the last 10 years? Anyone? Yeah, right? So here's how we picked a CRM system at DivvyCloud. I came in one morning and I said to my CEO, I said, Brian, we need to get a CRM system because we're going to start to kind of track customers and what they're doing. He said, all right. So we spent about 2 hours trolling the web, finding, what are the best CRM systems for small businesses. Found 3 or 4. We downloaded them. I was looking at them from the front end to see how they would work. He's looking at them from the back end to see how we can hack through the APIs to do the things we need to do. We came back from lunch, we picked one, we downloaded it. By the end of the day, we had all our customer records in it. That was it. One day, and it was done. If I was in a typical organization 10 years ago, it would have been, let's go get everybody's requirements, and let's do an RFP, and let's do demonstrations, and then let's, go through 6 months of negotiations, and then I've got to go hire a service organization to implement it, and blah, 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 blah. So, as I said, move fast. It's always easier to kind of decelerate when you see the real risk and you get your feet over the edge of the cliff. But in this day and age, moving quickly is very important.
Well, this has been great. We are about out of time. So let me share with you a couple of other resources that you can check out. So if you liked what we've talked about today, I would encourage you to visit modernmarketingtoday.com. This is an online magazine that shares best practices, news, tips, trends for marketers. It's free to subscribe to. You can find a lot of great content there. I also have a new book out called Welcome to Web2Sales. It is free to download. You can find it on Modern Marketing Today, but there's a URL for that. And then what I would like to offer to each of our panelists, and I'm of course going to expect that they wear these shirts today at some point, is your very own That's Web2Sales t-shirt.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to express my appreciation. And we actually have some of these t-shirts available. So if you have an interest in getting your very own That's Web2Sales t-shirt, I will be here the rest of the day. I've got a colleague, Kristen, here as well. We can switch business cards. We'll be able to get you a shirt without a problem. I thank you so much for participating and sitting in on this. I'm going to encourage each of our panelists to stick around for a little bit. So if you do have questions, I'm sure that you'll be open to answering any questions, exchanging business cards. Thank you again very much. Thanks a lot, everyone. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful conference today.